For my nonfiction project, I read Girl Interrupted. It is a memoir by Susanna Kaysen, and it recounts the 2 to 3 years that she spent in the late 60s in a mental institute. She stayed with a few other teenage girls that were experiencing different mental illnesses that she was experiencing, and I really enjoyed this book. I want to read more from this author because I loved her tone of voice throughout the entire thing, because I knew that this book was going to be sad. I was prepared for that. You know, I've had friends who have read it. I've had people who've seen the movie have told me, like, oh, you're reading that? Oh, it's so sad. It's so, depressing. But what I really enjoyed about it was that I didn't feel down in the dumps or depressed. And obviously, I felt a lot of pity for her and for the other girls, especially the ones that had even worse experiences than she did, because who wants to be living in a mental hospital. But what I found so interesting and what I enjoyed so much was how her tone really, it evoked pity, but throughout the entire book, she's not trying to make you feel sorry for her. You can tell by her tone of voice and her writing is that she doesn't want you to cry over her story or her friend's story and feel bad for them throughout the whole thing. That's just not what she intended when she wrote this. But it really just shows you from a first-person perspective what it's like to be an 18-year-old girl and be living with a mental illness. So for my project, I decided to do a painting. I've always loved to paint. I don't really know why. Just ever since I was a kid, I always just was like, Mom, I need more canvases, I need more paint, I need whatever, because I just painted a lot of things. I did 4-H for a couple years growing up, and I always entered in the fine arts category because it was an excuse to paint, really. So I took a few different aspects of the book, a few different things, and I put them together to create this. And I chose these different aspects because I thought they fit with the overall theme of the book, which is perception versus reality. There are a lot of different themes throughout this book that you could argue are more important, but I felt the most profound theme that stood out the most to me was perception versus reality. So, this is what I did. It's acrylic mostly. It's actually all acrylic except for the writing. That's just Sharpie markers because it's really hard to write words with a paintbrush, in my opinion. So, one of the things I wanted to include was this kind of checkerboard sort of pattern, but this actually represents the tile floors that she would see at the supermarket before she was in the mental institute, or there was an ice cream parlor that sometimes her and the girls would get escorted to by the nurses, and they would take them and they get ice cream. And a lot of ice cream parlors have this type of tile flooring, supermarkets, the big squares, and for some reason that really set Susanna over the edge. She couldn't handle seeing, I guess, the infinity of squares almost, which I felt fit with the theme because, in reality, it's just a bunch of tiles on a floor that aren't gonna hurt you or anything, but her brain, her perception, it was not okay for her. Another thing that I really wanted to include was some sort of depiction of cigarettes. And I found a picture like this on the internet, and I used that as a reference just of someone holding a cigarette so I could, copy it onto the canvas. I wanted to include some aspect of smoking, whether it be cigarettes, cigars, whatever it may be, because, most people use cigarettes, whether they use them frequently or just occasionally, every once in a while, hardly ever at all. The main reason most people use them is because they have stress. They have a lot of stress and they just want to take the edge off, or They want to escape from their life for 5 minutes while they're smoking their cigarette. And that's what I feel a lot of the girls in the book did, because most, if not all, of the teenage girls that she lived with, including herself, smoked cigarettes on a regular basis, which they could, they use cigarettes because that's something they could control. You know, they're being watched by nurses constantly. They literally have people coming around to check on them, some of them every half hour, some of them every 5 minutes. They can't spend more than 5 minutes alone with themselves, but they can control smoking a cigarette. So, and it also, you know, kind of help them as well, kind of escape from the pressure that they felt they were under. So when I decided I wanted to have some depiction of cigarettes, I thought, what if I use the smoke as sort of a thought bubble? You know, in the comic strips, you've got little clouds coming out of a person's head and you can see what they're thinking. And what goes in a thought bubble? Words. So I took a couple quotes from the book that I thought applied to the theme. The first one here is, was everybody seeing this stuff and acting as if they weren't? Was insanity just a matter of stopping the act? Or dropping the act, sorry. This one stood out to me a lot because I was like, wow, you know, we all have, you know, everyone's different. We're all completely unique to ourselves. We all have a different idea of what the world is and what other people do in this world and why they're interacting with it the way they do. And I thought I loved hearing this from her point of view, because I haven't been diagnosed with a mental illness. She has, and from her perspective, you know, she's saying, you know, people say I'm crazy, people see me as kind of loony, but are they like that too, and they're just pretending not to be? Who's to say? And I really like that. The second one down here is, sometimes the only way to stay sane is to go a little crazy. I really, really enjoyed this quote because, you know, sometimes we all feel like we're going crazy and we're going whatever, but that's just a part of life, you know? You can't be normal all the time. We all have to relieve our stress in some way, in some shape or form. And, you know, people may perceive, again, perception versus reality. Her reality is a little crazier, you could say, than most other people. But she's like, hey, that's just my life. And maybe for me to be sane, I just have to be a little crazy. This third one is, there is thought and then there is thinking about thoughts, and they don't feel the same. A lot of people, you know, young and old, have had moments in their life where they're like, this is my brain, this is my body, I'm thinking the things I'm thinking, the words are coming out of my mouth, and just everything just kind of hits them at once, and it's a really weird experience. But you know, we have our thoughts of, oh, that's cool, whatever, but like, when you really think about what went through your body, the neurons and the dendrites and the signals and all that to make you think that is really, really cool to me. So I wanted to include that quote as well. And this final one is a little long, but it kind of sums up this whole theme to me of perception versus reality. It says, have you ever confused a dream with life, or stolen something when you have the cash? Have you ever been blue, or thought your train was moving while sitting still? Maybe I was just crazy. Maybe it was the 60s. Or maybe I was just a girl interrupted. This quote really kind of sums up the whole book and sums up Susanna's life to me. You know, she's perceiving this dream, but is it real? Is it not? Is it, you know, and we can't be sure because we're all so different. And, yeah, that's that. This is what I did, and I wanted to be as creative as I could within this small canvas, and I really enjoyed what came out of it.